now we recognize the gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Stauber.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ranking Member Lukemeier, for holding this here. It's very important. And I will just say that I have really, really strong concerns about the leadership at the SBA under Administrator Guzman. I can tell you that when our small businesses get information stating that they should or better opt in, otherwise they're going to be subject to audits, etc. That's the heavy hand of the government that I will fight against tooth and nail. I know many of us on both sides of the aisle. Well, that's not how we treat our small businesses that are just coming out of COVID, just struggling to make it. And so I would just say that first. We can't have the SBA and this administrator a rule with a heavy hand. And I wanted to say, earlier we talked about the PPP and some banking. My comment is our local lending institutions did a tremendous job with very little information upon the distribution of the PPP loans. With very little information, we did it in a quick way. But I just want to publicly thank our lending institutions that helped so many businesses stay afloat and helped people keep their doors open, during the COVID crisis. I will also say that Administrator Guzman was in our great state of Minnesota at an event, and her partisanship showed very well. Myself and Congressman Hagedorn, who are both members of this committee, weren't invited by her or any of her staff. And I will say that my staff, both in the district and in Washington, D.C., have been very, very concerned with the lack of effort and the lack of response that Administrator Guzman and her staff have given to us when we requested information. Either late, slow, or no response, and that's just simply unacceptable. And the partisanship on her end must stop. Her actions speak loud and clear. I should say her partisan actions speak loud and clear. So my question, Mr. Fisher, what has communication from the SBA been like for the lenders? Has guidance been clear, especially as it relates to forgiveness? And have you had difficulty getting answers to any of your questions, Mr. Fisher?
Yeah, it's been problematic throughout the whole process. And I don't want to, SBA did a good job building the system, as Ms. Ward said, on the fly. We were basically flying from New York to LA, building the plane as we were going. So I congratulate SBA on their efforts to put this all together, but it has been problematic getting answers from SBA. And that's why we've always felt it's important to be that buffer between the customer and SBA, because we have relationships with people at SBA, and even having those relationships, it's been difficult to get clarity and answers on complicated questions.
Thank you very much for that answer. And then, are you concerned with the new SBA direct forgiveness portal? And if you are, what would you instead like to see moving forward, and how might Congress help?
I'm not concerned with the portal. I think as far as having that portal, I think it's a great option for maybe some banks or other institutions that don't have a forgiveness method. But I think, don't force people's hand into utilizing the portal. And I think having those relationships with the borrowers is really, I think, we create that buffer and we can help with those complicated questions. And I think even Ms. Ward alluded to the fact that some of our smaller borrowers, our smallest loan was $430, but some of those are some of the more complicated questions that arise. And so if we can help answer those questions based on relationships we've had for 40 years, that's what we try and do.
Well, Mr. Fisher, I appreciate those answers. And you're one of the institutions that help keep our small businesses afloat. As well as I did 16, 17 months ago, you didn't have the answers, and we didn't either. So we were working through it. And our lending institutions across this nation deserve so much credit for helping us out and helping get that capital to where it needed in a short period of time. So with that, as we move forward here, I think that we ought to make sure that we always talk about the economic drivers in our communities are our small businesses, and we need to take care of our small businesses. As Mr. Fisher said, that know the customer, that relationship building is extremely important. Having been in small business for 31 years, I understand that relationship with the banking and your bankers and the institutions are incredibly important. So with that, Madam Chair, I will yield back. Thank you.
The gentleman yields back, and now we recognize the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Evans, for 5 minutes.